What's up, guys? My name is Andrea, and a lot of you know me as a Navy veteran, amateur comedian, a whole bunch of things. But about 15 years ago, a little more than that, I started off as a volunteer ski patroller, became a paid patroller, and I actually eventually patrol director of a small family owned ski resort out in California. Learned a lot of mountain operations while I was out there, not just ski patrol. Uh, Learned a little bit about the ski lifts, the grooming machines, just how different departments worked with each other. Uh, Following that, I actually taught skiing at another family owned resort in Idaho. So I've learned a fair amount of mountain operations, how ski resorts work, and continue to stay informed on these things. So I thought, what better way to put this otherwise outdated expertise to use but to review the movie Ski Patrol. 1990 slapstick comedy. Not exactly a hit, not exactly memorable, but easy enough for me to rip some clips and present it for you here today and go over some of the historical context and some of the premises, plot points, so on and so forth. So let's get started. Okay, filmed in Utah. You can tell from the snowpack, a little bit warmer conditions. And just taking a gander at this guy. Screams early 90s skiing, so we'll pause it right here. Spider, definitely a very popular uh, clothing line, not just back then, but today. Very, very nice, expensive clothing. But you can tell it's kind of warm. Just from the snowpack, it's obviously gone through a lot of freezing and melting cycles. A lot of the air has been let out of it. It's packed down. It's been gone over with groomers. Crystal clear day. And with the skis, of course, we saw that they're the older style, straight, long ski. We'll get into ski technology a little bit later. One of the things I do want to point out, and this is with my ski patrol and medical experience, this man is not wearing any sunglasses or goggles. Uh, of course, if you just go in raw dog in the snow with your eyeballs, you can get snow blindness. So it's very important to wear some sort of UV protection, whether it be sunglasses, which is okay for spring conditions, but maybe it's a little bit too cold in the dead of winter. Goggles are a better bet for you. So we'll keep going. And he is approached by another guy who is wearing day glow. This is very popular, late 80s, early 90s, and even though it looks like terrible fashion sense, survival-wise, makes a lot of sense. You're going to stick out like a sore thumb, so if you get lost anywhere, it's actually pretty safety conscious when you think about it.
Kramer, Snowy Peaks isn't big enough for the both of us.
Then I guess we'll just have to deflate your head, Lance.
Smoking on the slopes? Sure. Why not? Unfortunately, you do see a lot of cigarette and cigar butts on the slopes. Kind of disappointing, but, what are you going to do? A lot of people litter. They think it's the outdoors. They can get away with it. Get snow over it. But then you see it in the springtime, and it sucks, especially the cans. Okay, here we have a plastic garbage can. Always good to have places to dispose of refuse, but something like that, unless it is somehow bolted down, um, the slightest breeze is going to take that baby off and send it right down the hill. Okay, here they get into their ski racing. Really good technique. They're back a little bit to keep their tips up above the snow, which is smart. Another thing is it's kind of hard to tell from the side, but straight skis like that were really long, like say 200 centimeters or more, skiers mainly skied with their feet together, and that was just to give them, surface area to stay on top of some softer snow. In more recent years, skis have gotten a lot shorter, but they've also gotten wider. So people tend to ski with their feet further apart. Just a little bit of an adaptation when it comes to the equipment. Now here with the snowpack, we see that it's a lot lighter and fluffier. Of course, this is not a part of the mountain that would have been groomed and had the snow packed down, but you can also tell that it's been a little bit colder wherever this is filmed, so it might have been filmed before the main production took place. And a lot lighter, a lot colder conditions to create this kind of snow. Plus, you can see the snow on the trees. That doesn't last for very long. Even if it doesn't get too warm, wind, whatever else can blow the snow off the trees. So you can definitely tell that this is a little more in season, what we're seeing here. Okay, so Martin Mull represents a corporate interest who wants to take over the mountain. And I'll explain this a little bit. So, for those of you who don't know, ski resorts are giant money pits, okay? It's very rare that you see a family-owned resort anymore because one bad season, I mean, you don't even so much as break even. You start to think about the cost of running the lifts, either in power or diesel fuel if you're running it off of a generator, your staff, everything else, the equipment, grooming and everything else. If it's poor visibility, you need to turn on the lights on the ski lift. That's an enormous cost. I mean, you're talking maybe $1,000 for the day for a very small bunny lift. It's very expensive to run a ski resort, so really something like a large corporation is going to have the pockets deep enough to make it worthwhile. So this is, and especially late 80s, early 90s, you would see a lot of that where the money comes in to take something over. What isn't too possibly true to life is that a member of ski school is conspiring to, or is colluding with the corporate interests to have him take over the mountain. I think for the most part, whether it was ski patrols, ski school, lift operators, I mean, we did different things, but we were all pretty much on the same page. And we wouldn't have conspired like this, but it's a movie.
Glad enough to pay me the overtime you owe me from last season?
From last season? So here's why that's funny. As I mentioned, you could see that it's very warm conditions. Now you could say, all right, well, earlier in the season it might be warm too. True, but you can also tell that there's somewhat of a snowpack. There's been a snow accumulation. So you can tell that this is springtime, this is later in the season, and you'll hear them talk about, oh, we're getting ready for the season and inspections. There's no way. You are at the tail end of your season. A lot of your staff is kind of mentally checked out. They're ready to get on with their spring and summer activities. So that's just kind of strikes me as funny knowing what's going on. Also reminiscent of the 90s, you have like a Seinfeld-esque bass line. Also, fun fact, since this was filmed in 1990, this dog is now dead. Snowmobiles can, in fact, go over hard ground, cement, concrete, you name it. It's just the skis up front aren't really going to be able to sink into anything to steer. So you're really just traveling in a straight line. So this is pretty accurate. As to whether or not it could break down doors, I'm going to have to go with no. But, hey, movie. Yeah, ski houses like this, a lot of people living in them. It was always a party. Someone was always going to be partying. Just the way it was, especially, Donner Ski Ranch. We had a lot of South American kids coming working for us. They were all about that party lifestyle.
What do you got there?
Oh, it's TheraBand. It's brand new. They put in all the first aid kits. See, it stretches, but it doesn't break. I'm just using it to beef up my forearms for recertification. I'm gonna make it this year.
Good.
Okay, so TheraBand is a thing even into this day. It's just an elastic band. It's mainly used for rehabilitation of injuries. So a lot of times, like say you've had shoulder surgery, it's time to start putting some some work back in your rotator cuff. You could do internal rotation, external rotation. With TheraBand, it provides like continual resistance. Way too complicated. The only reason I could think of why it would be in a med kit is if you are using it as like a temporary tourniquet for IVs. Ski patrol, however, your vast majority of your ski patrollers are going to be basic life support. IVs, things like that, that gets more into advanced life support, so you wouldn't see that necessarily. Also, he mentions that he's going to be using it to beef up his forearms for recertification. Forearm strength never really came up, except maybe rappelling off of a ski lift. It's really not a test of strength so much. There'd be no point to that. And recertification for ski patrols comes twofold. There's a medical one, which is over the summer during the season. You're working on your medical skills. You do a refresher course, usually about a third of your material every year, and you're recertified. And then there's also a ski portion. I mean, hopefully your ski skills haven't diminished too significantly over the summer, and you're qualified to pull a toboggan and all that stuff. But they do some practice with that in the early season.
Hey, did you hear what happened to me last summer? I read about it. As long as we don't have to test it on no...
All right, so here we have rodent ranchero. Rodents, pests in general, are a huge problem at ski resorts. Maybe not so much in the ski houses. I mean, yes, they're pests, they're a problem, as anyone can attest to, but you want to keep them out. They're a huge nuisance, a huge problem at ski resorts because they can get into the electrical of, like, say, a ski lift. Very dangerous stuff. Ski lifts are very complex machines. They run off of, in most instances, electricity. So you have whatever it is, your 480 power coming in, or you have your 24-volt DC safety system, also extremely important. And if those circuits aren't completed, the lift won't start up. So having rodents chew through those things, big problem. So I don't think that rodents would have been as revered by this group. We did our best while on the hill to exterminate as many rodents as possible, report and address those problems so they wouldn't grow into a bigger one. So them having some sort of PlayStation for rodents is, I'm going to say, not accurate. But again, movie.
Oh, man, it's 4:30 in the morning. This is lame.
You know, Murray, since he's director, he has to play everything official.
Yeah, so the life of a ski patroller can start very early. So a couple of things with that. My day never started at 4:30. Reason being that it would start that early is if you have avalanche control. The two resorts that I worked at in particular were, I think they're called Class C. So very low avalanche risk, and anything that you did need to mitigate could be done by, cutting cornices. You ski across and break a little bit off. It's not particularly dangerous. Some of the bigger resorts really need some serious avalanche control, as you'll see in this movie later, but a staple of Utah avalanche control is they have howitzers, and they will blow up the snow. Other stories that I've heard, actually from my EMT instructor, Victor Hernandez, shout out to him. They used to handle dynamite, and they would throw 6 sticks of dynamite. The interesting thing about this is the barehanded nitroglycerin. Nitroglycerin, if you do not know, is a vasodilator. It makes your blood vessels bigger. This has implications for your blood pressure. Now, if you're about to have a heart attack, nitroglycerin, great thing. Open up those blood vessels, hopefully avert disaster. If you're a perfectly healthy individual, lowering that blood pressure can be a real problem. You can go horizontal real fast. So what they used to do to mitigate this is drink coffee, of course, a vasodilator, to keep themselves conscious. But the reason these guys are up so early, of course, is going to be avalanche control. The other thing I want to point out is they have their radios on harnesses like this. It looks like it's tight, whatever else, but if you really get cooking on a pair of skis or you're doing any sort of running, anything like that, that radio just bounces up into your face. It's a real pain in the ass.
Inspector Kravitz of the Park Service decides who makes this team.
Okay, so the Parks Department, I don't know about the Parks Department. Now, my experience lies in California. We had the Forest Service. Some of the ski resorts' land was on Forest Service land. We were basically leasing it from them, and we had to... they had a few stipulations for us. Mainly, like, we couldn't have advertisements on the ski towers, for example. They requested that we paint it green instead of our usual blue. Weird little things like that. We had to get special permission if we needed to do tree removal, for example. But for the most part, they didn't have too much of a say on ski patrol. It was maybe like our written operations or rules or something like that. They didn't inspect us like we were gladiators or anything like that.
So, for those of you who've been wasting my time for 7 years...
Okay, trying out for 7 years. I assure you, it is not that hard to make ski patrol. The biggest thing, and they don't really emphasize it here, is going to be the medical portion. That's basically the equivalent of an EMT, emergency medical technician, basic course, so about 110, 120 hours. The ski patrol has their own variation called outdoor emergency care. And it's more geared towards what you're going to be encountering on the slopes, whereas EMT is more like car crashes, things like that. But either one gives you the skills to handle medical emergencies on a ski slope. And then, of course, there's the skiing competence. Now, a lot of patrollers, maybe they had the medical qualification down, but they weren't very good skiers or whatever else. We could certainly get them remediated as skiers, but they were still great patrollers and we called them auxiliary patrollers because they could work in the ski patrol room and handle walk-ins, things like that. So toboggan handling, while it's important, it's good to be a well-rounded patroller. It's not like you're completely useless. Like that's silly. You could still go out and put up safety closures, things like that. You're still a very valued member of the team. So, in 7 years to pass seems a little steep, but I guess we have to have a plot point because movie.
Now, this season, I'm very pleased to say that visiting us from a foreign country is someone very special. This sweet young lady's name is Tiana Chachornia.
Okay, a foreign exchange ski patroller. I've never heard of this. I certainly imagine there's going to be visitors of some sort, but they're not going to be wearing the uniform because the uniform implies that you're able to provide medical care. That's what the cross symbolizes. So maybe on a more like unofficial observational status, maybe you would see that. I never did. But then again, I worked at small family resorts. Maybe it's different at a large corporate operation. All right, that snowmobile sliding away, actually pretty accurate. And that's why you always, if you have a fall line, fall line is an imaginary line. Like say if you drop a ball and it rolls down the hill, that straight line is the fall line. So you want to park your snowmobile perpendicular to that fall line so it doesn't go down the hill. It might roll, but in that case, you probably shouldn't be parking it there anyway. You should get to where you're going. But yeah, never park your snowmobile going down the hill. It doesn't have an e-brake per se. Okay, ski patrollers will never have to ski like that, but good to have balance. they'd never have to ski race courses.
Okay, guys, pay attention. It's our 75mm recoilless rifle. It's our avalanche buster.
What do you people think this is, a fiesta? There are too many people up there. Now, one of you, come on down.
All right, so this is, supposed to represent the howitzer that is famous in Utah avalanche operations, as I mentioned before. Of course, sitting behind any sort of projectile, anything like that, really stupid idea. Don't do it. But again, movie, slapstick.
Now the first one. Go for it.
All right, so I'm going to pause it right there. They're working on toboggans. Toboggans, of course, if someone's injured, ski patrol comes and gets him with looks like a Cascade toboggan right there, and loads the individual in. Off they go. So a couple of things with this. When you have an empty toboggan, you don't have to lock the handles, and it's kind of difficult to see, but there's like these claw grips that come up and lock the handles. So you can't lower the handles, you can't raise the handles. If you do, it raises or lowers the entire toboggan. The other thing, the handles curl up as she's handling them. I've never seen the toboggan configured that way. I suppose you certainly could. But you actually want the handles down, because when you get to the injured person with the empty toboggan, you take the handles and you want the hooks down to force them into the snow to give a little bit of extra stability. There's still going to be people holding onto the toboggan as the other patrollers load the injured person into it. Then the toboggan handler gets in, they raise the handles, they lock them, they're ready to go. Another thing that you'll see is there's a little rope coming down the left handle. That rope is attached to a chain, and that chain will be on the outside of the toboggan, like on the orange part as you're looking at it. If you get into some really steep, icy conditions and you're having trouble slowing down, because think about that toboggan weighs a little bit as well as your human cargo, you're going to need a little additional braking system. You can drop that chain underneath the toboggan. It'll slow it down. In steep, icy conditions, it's not going to do much. But if you're, just kind of cruising along, it can pretty much stop it. You can come right out of the handles. So you do want to be a little careful in employing that brake. But that's just a little background on how those toboggans work. All right. Old-timey snowboards. So we'll take a look at this configuration. So snowboards back in the day were a little bit more like alpine boards, kind of more of a racing stance. So your feet are going to be more or less pointed in the same direction. Snowboards nowadays, your feet are wider apart. You're more of a duck-footed stance. But again, this is early 90s snowboarding. This is kind of more what you did. This stance would certainly kind of keep you from riding switch, going backwards. A little bit harder to do that way. But if you're duck-footed, hey, it's like you're ambidextrous. It's cool. But yeah, early 90s snowboarding. This is how it was done.
That's great. You guys are doing great. Keep it up.
All right. So that is a really good ski teaching technique to get people to understand how their edges work. Your uphill edges, of course, hold you on the slope, and walking up like that can help people to learn to feel their edges. However, this is going to be something that is taught more on the bunny slope. You're not going to be already up the hill. Learning this technique, you probably don't really understand like how to do pizza, French fry just yet. You haven't really been going, and you certainly don't know how to turn. Knowing how to turn, how to complete a turn, how to control your speed with turns is absolutely necessary before going up, graduating from the bunny hill.
Light 'em up.
I probably am pointing out the obvious at this point, but having any sort of flame next to the synthetic materials that comprise ski clothing is just going to melt that shit to your legs, cause some real problems.
I'm gonna have to write you a citation.
Yeah, so this
your
is
first one
like
in
the
years,
Park
Sandra.
Service or Park Ranger. Again, they wouldn't really cite us for stuff. Maybe my recollection it doesn't serve, but they don't really carry any sort of legal enforcement, legal capacity. But yeah, you do have to uphold your end of the bargain and agreement, whatnot. But this would be more like the police would do this. But I guess they could really only afford one law enforcement character, so movie. All right, so we have a vision of night skiing here. Couple of things with this. This isn't really how night skiing works. It's going to be on groomed runs, kind of like this one, but near a ski lift. The ski lift towers going to have lights on them. That's how you're going to be able to see. As you can see here, they have paper bags with candles in them. Other than the obvious fire hazard, the pain in the ass of setting these up every few yards. It's a pain to do, and it's going to be a pain to clean up. The groomers are not going to like that. We'll get to those a little later. And you're not going to be carrying a lantern. Maybe you've got like a, light on your head or something like that, but you're not going to be carrying a lantern. That's just a little silly. All right, so these parasailing skis, we're going to look at this in a little more detail. This is, again, just some kind of weird thing where they wanted to have people get down the mountain in new and novel ways. And these made basically no sense, which is why they went away. And we're going to look at the contraption here. So you have skis with this contraption mounted on top of it. And we're going to see very quickly why it's such a terrible idea. And it's basically, if you have to go anywhere other than a wide open groomed run, your stupid parasailing crap is going to catch on trees and kill you. And this guy basically gets shredded. Very bad place to go, even though that snow might be kind of fun. See, it's all shredded, it's not doing him any good, and his skis are going to be a set distance apart.
Wait right here, I'll be right back, okay?
Wait right here, I'll be right back. A couple of problems with that. She's not going to be hiking up the hill. It's going to be faster for her to go all the way down and take a ski lift up. Even with that, I mean, we're talking at least 10 minutes before she comes back. This is going to be in the days before high-speed detachable chairs. Those don't show up like the earliest iterations of that until a couple years after this movie's made. So everything is a fixed grip chairlift, which means you're traveling at about tops 700 feet per minute. And that's not very fast. So that's not going to get you to the top of the hill too quickly. And that's a really, really crappy thing for a ski instructor to do, is to abandon their class. Unless there's just some really deadly circumstance, there's not much you're going to be able to do. You're going to need to let the ski patrollers take care of that. Okay, and if she's trying to catch up, she would not be making turns. She'd be going straight.
You being paid?
I'm no idiot.
Stop this thing before you kill somebody!
All right, so then they get hooked up. And part of the problem with that is once you're caught up, I mean, that sucks. But if you can't slow down, if you can't control it, your best bet is going to be to fall. And just grab the person and either pull them or push them and get off to the side, fall, and you can stop from there. All right, ski groomers. So those are super cool, super fun. And probably, I would say for the most part, Utah uses piston bullies. Now, there's different brands of groomers, whatever else. Now, in the 80s, pretty much all you had to work with was LMCs, Logan Manufacturing Company, which is actually related to DeLorean, if you can believe that. As time went on, piston bully is based out of Germany. These are great machines. I am proud to say I'm able to drive one. I am not able to operate one. It really is just a work of art machine. I think it lays down a really nice groomer track. Now, the configuration that you see here with these 3 piston bullies would never happen in real life. A couple of reasons. Now, you can have multiple groomers. That's a great idea. Part of the problem is you would never have them right next to each other because the track that they lay down, they can't overlap. What you'll usually see is the groomers would be offset. So you'd have one and then the other. So the groomer track, connects. Otherwise, you're going to have gaps in that. It's going to be uneven, not look great. But piston bully's a great machine. And I don't really remember a whole lot of other ones. Some of them kind of drive like tractors. Some of them are kind of overpriced. Piston bully, I always thought was it's a very nice machine. So shout out to Piston Bully.
I want to hear it. How much money do we have?
$412.
There are 25 ski patrollers, and all we have is $412.
25 ski patrollers, $412. I'm actually impressed that it's that high, especially in cold hard cash. We're in a different era now, 30 plus years on, so maybe some patrollers could Venmo a bit more capital, but I kind of doubt that. And then it turns out bail is only like $1,000. So really kind of surprising they weren't able to scrape together more. But in terms of patrollers being strapped on cash, that's probably pretty fairly accurate. They probably overestimated the funds they were able to get together. All right, so this is kind of why I wore my headphones. If you look here, he has his headphones on backwards. Red is supposed to be on the right, blue on the left. All right, so we're looking at rocket skis. As I'm sure you might be able to imagine, enormously impractical. It would certainly throw off your balance to have them forcibly propelled down the hill and trying to keep your weight over your feet. That would be pretty damn tough. Plus, you see a little later on that he launches projectiles out of them. Makes no sense. And then you have just an explosives depot in the middle of the hill. Yeah, not too likely, but movie. All right, so this has some basis in reality. So, there are a lot of outdoor barbecues, mobile cooking facilities at ski resorts. And just like this contraption here has, it's got some skis on the bottom, so it could be towed by a groomer and get put where it needs to go. It would be exceedingly unlikely to put this thing on the top of the hill, anywhere where there's an incline. First of all, to get it up there in the first place would be a giant pain. But second of all, it'd be very dangerous to have it up there for this exact reason. Especially if you're putting it on top of snow. Snow melts, freezes, shifts, and all sorts of things. So you'd be having to make constant adjustments to make sure that the site is perfectly level and is not in danger of going down the hill. Anything that is slippery on the bottom, has some weight to it, and is on an incline, that potential energy can turn into kinetic energy real fast and cause disaster. Okay, so I want to make a quick note here in this where they're tied together with TheraBand. Shout out to the stuntmen on this to be able to do that, because it can really throw off your balance and everything else, but they do a really good job of making this look pretty damn cool. And on those types of slopes without poles for additional balance, it is a lot harder to do than it looks. Now, one thing that I did want to talk about that I wasn't able to pirate or rip a clip of is there's one particular chase scene where Kramer launches himself off a cliff and grabs onto a ski lift chair, and there's 2 women in it. This is a highly improbable scene for a couple of reasons. First of all, if you're going downhill, you're not gonna land on the back of a ski lift chair. That's just common sense. The other problem is this is a double chair, which implies that probably their counterweight was at the bottom of the hill. Now, this is getting into more technical lift stuff. Ski lifts, you have a haul rope. This is like a braided metal wires, and it does stretch over time. It stretches with increased load on the chair, so more people on it, and heat can be another one. So older chairs, they just had a counterweight. It was about, I think, like a 15,000 pound cement block at the bottom that would pull constant tension on the chair. If you had something that disruptive as like a human person landing on it, that can cause a ton of problems. It could even derail the chair. More recent lifts, so you probably see it with like 3-person chairs, a little bit bigger. Your counterweight's not going to cut it anymore. You need something, there's the potential change over time and more immediate changes because you're adding increased load. You need an automatic tensioning system, and you see this, I think, starting in like early to mid 80s. A great example, Donner Ski Ranch's main chairlift is a triple chair. It is a 1985 Poma chair. That has an automatic tensioning system, so with the changing loads, it doesn't pull a consistent amount of tension like some of the older chairs do, like these double chairs, which you can get away with. And every chairlift's a little bit different. It's certainly gotten more standardized in recent years. I think the last 2 chair companies in business are Poma and Doppelmayr SeaTech. And that's, they've gotten into high-speed chairs and all this other stuff. High-speed chairs, insanely expensive. Those grips are constantly in motion, constantly in use, coming under stress, always need to be inspected and replaced. Fixed grip chairlifts like you see in this movie, they're a little more simple. They're not as fast, but they're more simple, much easier to maintain. And ski lifts are a pain to maintain and to build, actually. There's a lot of things to take into consideration, and you would think engineering, they'd have it down by now. Not so. This is about 15 years ago at North Star at Tahoe. They were putting in, I want to say it was a tram. Now, when you install chairlifts, you do have to have an inspection. Obviously, you can't just build it and say, good to go. So they finished construction sometime in the summer of 2007. And they had to do a load test. How do you do a load test? You can't do it with real people. That's insane. What they did was they would take cardboard boxes, line it with trash cans, fill it with water, and it would be about 200 to 250 pounds. So it would simulate a person. And you would load that on there, one tram, car, gondola, whatever, at a time. That would create load and simulate what the thing would be like when it was fully loaded. Here's where they ran into problems. In the middle of summer, with no snowpack, they started having cars, trams, whatever, drag on the dirt. Huge problem. This is not one of those things you could just go in and like add another tower to shore things up. They had to get an excavation permit and dig it out so there was clearance for that and they could pass inspection. Now, this was not the end of their problems. If you are so incompetent at engineering, you allowed loaded cars to drag on the ground, you've probably fucked up something else. And indeed they did. Every tower has to be grounded. If you have the opportunity to see a lift tower at the bottom, it is mounted on a cement pier. This is dug into the ground, cement poured, and the tower itself bolted down onto that cement block. If you look on one of the 4 bolts, there's a wire wrapped around it, shoved into the ground. The tower is grounded. This is exceedingly important for reasons I'm sure you can imagine. Now, towers do not carry a comm wire. Now, this comm wire serves 2 purposes, at least. First one is there's a cable in there, and actually it creates tension between the towers to kind of keep things a little more stable, a little more in line. Great thing. But also, along that cable, there runs wires, and these wires are responsible for the 24-volt DC safety system that I talked about earlier. So there's derail switches on there, which would activate the emergency braking system of the ski lift. Very important stuff. You can also have, real electricity going through there. If you're going to be using this particular lift for your night skiing system, you can have lights on there. But for the most part, most of these installations are going to have the comm wire, which is just responsible, again, metal cable in between and wires for your safety system. Well, they didn't ground at least one of their towers. Lightning strike came before the start of the 2007-2008 season, and it fried all of their electrical. So that whole contraption went unused for a season until the following summer when they could get it all rewired up and working. And again, this was North Star at Tahoe. They have a Ritz-Carlton there. And they couldn't be bothered to do things correctly. And I don't think that's necessarily an indictment on them. It's just that the system that they were attempting was so complicated that they just didn't run the proper checks. You get to something that's smaller, family-owned, like, say, Pomerelle in Idaho or Donner Ski Ranch out in California. And I was also very impressed with Stevens Pass in Washington State. The lifts that they run are not high-speed detachables. They're much more simple fixed-grip chair lifts. Much easier to maintain, check all the boxes, and understand how that works. Identify problems as or even before they happen. Make things a lot safer. All right, so that is my time and my review of the movie Ski Patrol. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please like, comment, subscribe, all of those good things that us YouTubers ask you to do for us. And suggest another ski-related movie that I might want to review and easily pirate for clips. So I'm thinking maybe Out Cold. I think Ski School is one. I'm sure there's a myriad of ski movies that I could review, but I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you either for the next movie or for the decompression chamber. Thanks so much, guys.